What's your favorite essay from the new book?
John Hasnas, who's a Georgetown University professor, he's alive. He gave me permission to do it. I would say that one because he talked about the myth of objective law. So, the big sticking point for most people to make the full transition to anarchism is to have a legal system. And the argument is, okay, look, at the very base, we need to have a system of law where everyone can come together and have a base agreement. You can't do this, you can't do that. And being a law professor, he demonstrates that the idea of objective law is not only does not apply in reality, it's literally impossible even in theory. That whenever he gives many examples of like, look, whatever this legal case is, and these are, not these are just basic legal cases, like this person has a sweater, this one doesn't, or something like that, and they nail it to each other. You are going to have whoever is adjudicating this process, they are going to bring their worldview to the judgment inevitably. So there's no reason why everyone has to be under the same principle of law. And I'll give you a great example. That'll be very easy for people to solve. You and I are both eBay. We have an eBay exchange, and you're supposed to mail it to me, and somehow it gets lost in transition, right? So you can very easily imagine one legal system where you're the seller. It's your responsibility to get it to my hands. If you don't get it to my hands, I get my money back. Another legal system, you could say, well, I sent it. My hands are clean. Take it up at the post office, right? Both of those scenarios, if they're explicated ahead of time, which one is right? Which one is just? They both make perfect sense. And there's no reason why you can't choose which system of rules will govern your behavior. Now, it gets much trickier when you're coming to things like violent crime and murder and things like that. And that's a kind of a separate issue that we can get into later. But in terms of regarding that there has to be one legal system with one set of rules that everyone has to follow is demonstrably false. Second, the claim, and literally any lawyer will tell you, if objective law were possible, then you would know for a fact how that judge is going to rule in your case, right? If I buy something at the supermarket and it's expired milk, I'm getting a refund. Ahead of time. But if this is a legal system, not only do you have no idea of the outcome, you can be certain that the attorney's fees are going to be exorbitant and this is why, how often are people involved in lawsuits? It's regarded as a nightmare, right? Because the claim is that equality under the law, even if you're very, very poor, you have to have access to this system of adjudicating disputes. But everyone knows poor people do not have access to lawyers and things like that. They'll have access to it if they're the defendant. They'll have a public defender, at least in the States. I'm sure probably the same thing in Britain. But in terms of a lawsuit, they do not have access to this service, which defenders of the government will say is crucially necessary to everybody.
How would that be fixed in an anarchist society?
When everything would be resolved. We have it fixed right now in terms of eBay, right? So right now, you and I have a dispute, and eBay steps in and either gives me the refund or says, I'm out of luck, Chris sent the sweater. And even if I don't get the answer I want, I at least don't have to buy a lawyer, and it's resolved in seconds. Anarchism is not utopia. There's still going to be theft. There's still going to be killing. There's still going to be missing sweaters in the mail. The difference is the resolution of these problems is going to be much more efficient, cheaper, and much more conducive to peace, as opposed to imposing judgments that entire portions of the population find to be abhorrent.
That makes sense in a very binary scenario that's easily trackable, like an eBay situation.
Sure.
But if it was a more complex one, stuff to do with litigation in business law, business-to-business transactions, mergers,
Sure.
money, taxes, what about that? Surely that's just equally complicated.
Sure. So it would be the same thing as going to a practitioner versus going to a surgeon, right? If you're going to have things that are that technically complicated, you are going to have some kind of higher level court system to resolve it. But again, even in that case, it's still going to be cheaper because there'll be competition and different firms that we have that right now. Again, private arbitration. Different private arbitration would have the capacity to compete in terms of efficiency. Now, the question becomes, well, what if I don't respect the judgment of this private arbitration? That's when you have things like ostracism, things like credit scores. and so on and so forth. Having a bad credit score, which are done by, it's not Visa or MasterCard or American Express or Britain Express, I'm guessing you have, which are the ones who are kind of adjudicating the system. You have credit reports, right? And they tell both the credit card company and you what your credit score is, and they're saying, in my opinion, these are the odds this person is reliable in terms of repaying their debts. And not only is there one, there's three of them. So you would have the same sort of situation where it's like, okay, should you deal with, Williamson Co.? Well, historically, and it's only going to take one. Williamson Co. agreed to abide by the judgment of this third party. They refused, and that's basically going to very factually say it's much riskier to deal with this guy than it is to deal with them, where even if they don't agree with the judgment, they still, even they personally don't agree, they still follow through with the result.
It seems like there's a lot more work to be done on the front end then with that. You might get through the litigation side more quickly for deploying the law, but coming into it, it's going to be a little bit more effortful, at least in the beginning, because imagine how much all of this would be to set up, and you'd have to have some sort of agreed rules and principles between the different agencies that might be representing someone, so everyone would need to format their everything in the same way. So there still needs to be agreed rules and procedures and regulations over the top.
But as we said earlier, like let's go back to the cell phone example. I don't know, and you don't know what happens when I call you, and we have different cell phone providers, and we never need to know, because before those cell phone providers came to market, they already established procedures on how to deal with every other cell phone company so that their customers don't ever have to worry about it or think about it. So look at it this way, in terms of fashion. The problem, if anything, with fashion is we have too many choices, too many options. We have, books and magazines telling you which to choose. But when it comes to the law, you don't have choice. And it's much more expensive and costly. And the reason the law is such a concern, as opposed to fashion never being a political issue, is precisely because whatever the government does, it does poorly. And that's, to put it mildly.
Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe. It makes me very happy. Peace.